The stars belonged to the Zephyrians. At least, that's what Admiral Vextar believed as he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Stellar Dominion. The massive ship stretched for 3 kilometers, its purple hull gleaming under the light of distant suns. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations, monitoring the dozens of worlds that paid tribute to the Zephyrian Empire. Vextar was tall even for his species, standing nearly 8 feet high with blue-gray skin and 4 arms that moved, with practiced grace. His golden eyes scanned the star charts displayed before him. For 200 years, the Zephyrians had been the strongest force in this part of the galaxy. They had plasma weapons that could melt through any armor. Their void shields could stop almost any attack. Most importantly, they had never lost a single battle. "Admiral," called Sub-Commander Kreltos from his station near the front of the bridge. "We're receiving the monthly tribute reports from the outer colonies." Vextar nodded. The tribute system worked well. Smaller species gave the Zephyrians resources, technology, and soldiers in exchange for protection. Of course, the protection was mainly from the Zephyrians themselves, but the system kept peace across 50 star systems. "Any problems with the collections?" Vextar asked. The Morlachians tried to reduce their metal shipments again, but Captain Zexnall made them see reason. 3 warning shots at their mining station convinced them to pay in full. "Good. The strong must guide the weak, even if they resist." This was the Zephyrian way. They believed that advanced species had a duty to control primitive ones. It wasn't cruelty, they told themselves. It was the natural order of the universe. The Zephyrians had conquered space travel when other species were still hitting rocks together. They had every right to rule. Vextar was about to return to his command chair when Lieutenant Yexdar rushed over from the sensor station. The young officer's skin had turned pale blue, a sign of excitement or fear in Zephyrian physiology. "Admiral, you need to see this immediately," Yexdar said, his voice shaking slightly. "What is it?" "We've detected energy signatures from the edge of our scanning range. Grid section 7 Delta 9. Vextar frowned. That area was supposed to be empty space. "Pirates? Smugglers?" "No, sir. The energy patterns are unlike anything in our databases. The signatures suggest advanced technology, but not from any known species." This was interesting. Vextar walked over to the sensor station and looked at the readings himself. The energy patterns were strange indeed. They showed signs of fusion reactions, electromagnetic fields, and something else that the computers couldn't identify. "How far away?" he asked. "Approximately 47 light-years, sir. In an unclaimed system with a yellow star." Vextar thought for a moment. An unknown species with advanced technology could mean several things. They might have valuable resources, or knowledge that the Empire could use. They might also pose a threat if left alone to develop their civilization. "Have we seen any ships from this species before?" "No, sir. This is the first time we've detected any activity from that system. So they're either very new to space travel, or they've been hiding." Sub-Commander Kreltos joined them at the sensor station. "Admiral, what are your orders?" Vextar made his decision quickly. In his experience, it was always better to deal with potential problems before they became actual problems. "Prepare a diplomatic fleet. 12 ships, including 3 heavy cruisers, will make contact with this new species." "Diplomatic, sir?" Kreltos asked. "Of course. We'll offer them the same choice we offer everyone. Join the Empire willingly and enjoy our protection, or resist and face the consequences." This was standard procedure for the Zephyrians. They always gave new species a chance to surrender peacefully. If the aliens were smart, they would accept immediately. If they were stubborn, well, the Empire had ways of dealing with stubborn species. "Sir, should we wait for intelligence reports? We know very little about their military capabilities." Vextar laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "Kreltos, we've conquered every species we've ever encountered. Some fought harder than others, but none have weapons that can match our plasma cannons. None have shields as strong as our void barriers. This will be no different." He was right, of course. The Zephyrian military had never faced a serious challenge. Their last real battle had been 50 years ago against the Corvani Republic, and that had ended in 3 days when the Zephyrian fleet destroyed the enemy capital ships. Besides, Vextar continued, if they were truly dangerous, we would have heard about them before now. The fact that we're only detecting them now means they're probably just reaching space for the first time. Their technology might be advanced for primitives, but it can't compare to ours. The Admiral walked back to his command chair and activated the fleet communications system. Within hours, 11 other Zephyrian warships had received their orders and begun moving toward the rendezvous point. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Together, they represented the largest diplomatic fleet the Empire had ever assembled. As the Stellar Dominion entered hyperspace, Vextar felt satisfied with his preparations. 12 ships would be more than enough to handle whatever this new species could throw at them. In fact, it was probably too much. He expected the aliens to surrender as soon as they saw the fleet approaching their world. Admiral, Yextar called from his station, we're receiving more detailed scans of the target system as we get closer. What do you see? The system has 8 planets. The third one appears to be inhabited. Large cities, orbital stations, and what looks like mining operations throughout the system. Any defensive installations? Some, sir, but nothing that appears threatening. Their weapons seem to be primitive kinetic projectiles and chemical rockets. Vextar smiled. Kinetic weapons and chemical rockets were what species used before they discovered plasma technology. This would be even easier than he had thought. What? About their ships? We're detecting several dozen vessels, but most appear to be cargo haulers or exploration craft. Only a few show military configurations, and those are much smaller than our ships. Perfect. Signal the fleet. We'll drop out of hyperspace at the edge of their system and give them time to notice us. I want them to see our power before we make our demands. As the Zephyrian fleet traveled through hyperspace toward their target, Vextar began composing the speech he would give to the new species. It would be the same speech he had given to dozens of other civilizations. Submit to the Empire, and your people would be protected and guided by a superior civilization. Resist and face destruction. He had no doubt which choice these aliens would make once they saw 12 Zephyrian warships. No species had ever been foolish enough to fight against such overwhelming odds. The Admiral settled back in his chair and watched the stars stream past outside the viewports. Soon, the Zephyrian Empire would have another subject species to add to their collection, another world to provide tribute and resources, another victory to add to their perfect record. It never occurred to Vextar that some species might have very different ideas about surrender, or that the strange energy signatures they had detected might represent something far more dangerous than primitive technology taking its first steps into space. The Zephyrian fleet continued toward their destination, confident in their superiority and completely unprepared for what they would find waiting for them. The alarm bells rang through every military facility on Earth. Deep beneath the Colorado Mountains, Admiral Sarah Chen stared at the massive display screen showing the edge of the solar system. 12 red dots moved steadily toward Earth, their energy signatures unlike anything in human databases. How long until they reach us? Chen asked her Chief of Staff, Colonel Martinez. At their current speed, approximately 18 hours, Admiral. Chen was 55 years old and had spent her entire career preparing for this moment. For decades, Earth's scientists had wondered if humanity was alone in the universe. Now they had their answer, and it wasn't the peaceful first contact that optimists had dreamed about. What do we know about their capabilities? She asked. Dr. Rebecca Walsh, the head of Earth's Xenotechnology Division, stepped forward with a tablet full of sensor readings. Their ships are massive, Admiral. The largest one is over 3 kilometers long. We're detecting what appears to be plasma-based weapons and some kind of energy shielding. And our defensive capabilities? The silence that followed answered her question. Earth's Space Force consisted mainly of patrol boats, cargo ships, and mining vessels. The few military ships they had were designed for fighting pirates and smugglers, not alien warships. "Admiral," Colonel Martinez said quietly, "our largest ship is the cruiser Defiance, and it's only 400 meters long. Their smallest ship is twice that size." Chen nodded grimly. She had expected this day might come eventually, but she had hoped humanity would have more time to prepare. The species that had managed to survive 2 world wars, countless smaller conflicts, and the resource wars of the 2190s was about to face its greatest challenge yet. "What about the civilian evacuation plans?" "Already in motion, Admiral. We're moving people away from major cities and military installations. But with 18 hours notice, we can't evacuate 4 billion people in 18 hours, Chen finished. "We have to fight." She turned to the assembled officers in the command center. "Gentlemen, ladies, we always knew this day might come. We've spent the last century preparing for war against other humans. Now we get to find out if those preparations work against aliens." The room buzzed with nervous energy. Everyone knew the odds. Earth's Space Force had never fought anything bigger than a terrorist cell with stolen mining ships. These aliens had technology that seemed decades ahead of human science. "Admiral," Dr. Walsh said, "there might be one option we haven't discussed." Chen raised an eyebrow. "Go on." "The Indomitable." Several officers exchanged glances. The Indomitable was more legend than fact to most of them. Stories told in military academies about humanity's greatest weapon, built during the resource wars, but never used. "Doctor, the Indomitable was decommissioned 30 years ago. It's probably space junk by now." "Actually, Admiral, it's not." Dr. Walsh pulled up a new file on her tablet. "I've been part of a classified maintenance program. The ship is still operational, hidden in asteroid belt station Omega 7. Chen stared at her. "You're telling me we have a functional battleship and nobody thought to mention this before now?" It was classified above most people's clearance level. The ship was built using experimental technology that the government didn't want other nations to know about. After the resource wars ended, they decided it was too dangerous to keep active. "What kind of experimental technology?" Dr. Walsh hesitated. "Quantum-phased armor plating, relativistic mass drivers, antimatter torpedoes, and gravity bombs. The Indomitable was designed to fight an entire fleet by itself." Colonel Martinez whistled softly. "How big is this ship?" 2 kilometers long, 600 meters wide. It carries enough firepower to crack a small moon." Chen felt a spark of hope, for the first time since the aliens had been detected. "Can we get it operational in 18 hours? "The ship never actually went offline, Admiral. It's been in standby mode with a skeleton crew of 12. But there's a problem." "There always is." "What?" "The ship was designed by Dr. Elizabeth Reeves, and she built in some unusual safety features. The Indomitable can only be activated by someone with her genetic markers." "Is Dr. Reeves still alive?" "She died 15 years ago. But her daughter, Commander Lisa Reeves, is currently serving on the patrol ship Vigilant." Chen made her decision immediately. "Get me Commander Reeves on the line and prepare a fast transport to the asteroid belt." Within an hour, Commander Lisa Reeves was standing in the command center, looking confused and worried. She was 32 years old with short brown hair and the kind of steady eyes that came from years of military service. "Commander," Chen said, "we need you to activate your mother's ship." "My mother's ship?" "Admiral, with respect, my mother designed mining equipment and defensive systems. She never built a warship." Dr. Walsh stepped forward. "Commander, your mother spent 10 years working on the Indomitable project. She never told you because it was classified." Lisa Reeves looked stunned. "The Indomitable is real? I thought it was just military propaganda." "It's real, Commander. And right now, it's humanity's only chance against 12 alien warships." Chen explained the situation quickly. The aliens were approaching with overwhelming force. Earth's regular fleet wouldn't last 5 minutes against them. But the Indomitable had been designed for exactly this kind of impossible situation. "Commander," Chen said, "I'm giving you a field promotion to captain in command of the Indomitable. Can you do this?" Lisa Reeves looked at the display showing the approaching alien fleet, 12 massive ships carrying weapons that could destroy cities. Against them, humanity had patrol boats and mining ships, except for one legendary battleship that her mother had helped design. "Admiral, I've never commanded anything bigger than a patrol boat. Captain, right now you're the most qualified person alive to command that ship. Your mother programmed the control systems. You know her work better than anyone." Reeves took a deep breath. "What are my orders?" "Take the Indomitable to the edge of the solar system. Make contact with the aliens, and if they're hostile, blow them out of space." Chen nodded. "Show them what happens when someone threatens Earth." 2 hours later, Captain Lisa Reeves was aboard a fast transport heading for the asteroid belt. She carried her mother's personal files, which Dr. Walsh had given her, and a growing understanding of what the Indomitable really was. Her mother hadn't just designed a battleship. She had built a weapon of mass destruction. The ship carried enough firepower to sterilize a planet. Its armor could withstand nuclear blasts. Its weapons could punch through anything the human military had ever built. As the transport approached asteroid belt station Omega-7, Reeves saw the Indomitable for the first time. The ship was enormous, a dark gray wedge bristling with weapon systems. It looked like someone had taken a mountain and shaped it into a sword. "My God," she whispered to herself. "Mom, what did you build?" The skeleton crew that had maintained the ship for 30 years welcomed her aboard. They had been waiting their entire careers for someone with the right genetic markers to activate their ship's full systems. "Captain," said Chief Engineer Thompson, a man who had been working on the Indomitable since it was built, "we're ready to bring all systems online on your command." Reeves placed her hand on the genetic scanner next to the captain's chair. The ship's computers verified her identity and began powering up systems that hadn't been used in decades. "All stations report ready, Captain," Thompson announced. Through the viewports, Reeves could see Earth in the distance, a blue dot surrounded by the ships of humanity's small fleet. Beyond that, 12 alien warships continued their approach. "Chief, how long to reach the edge of the system?" "At full power. 6 hours, Captain." "Then let's go introduce ourselves to our visitors." The Indomitable left its hiding place and began accelerating toward the outer system. For the first time in 30 years, humanity's most powerful weapon was going to war. Admiral Vextar stood on the bridge of the Stellar Dominion as his fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the alien solar system. The yellow star burned brightly in the distance, and his sensors immediately began cataloging the system's contents. "Excellent positioning," he said to Sub-Commander Kreltos. "We're far enough out to observe their response, but close enough to demonstrate our power." The Zephyrian fleet formed a perfect battle line. 12 massive ships displaying their weapons and shields for all to see. It was a sight that had convinced dozens of species to surrender without firing a shot. "Admiral," Lieutenant Yextar called from his station, "we're being scanned by multiple sources throughout the system." "Good. Let them look. The more they see, the more likely they are to surrender immediately." Vextar activated the fleet's communication system and began broadcasting on all frequencies. His message was simple and had been perfected over 2 centuries of conquest. "Unknown species of the third planet, this is Admiral Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire. You have entered our sphere of influence and must now choose your future. Submit to imperial authority and enjoy our protection, or resist and face the consequences. You have 1 standard hour to respond." He cut the transmission and settled back to wait. Most species took less than an hour to surrender once they realized what they were facing. "Sir," Yextar said, "we're receiving a response." "Already?" "Put it through." A new voice came through the speakers, speaking in the aliens' language but translated by the ship's computers. It was a female voice, calm and professional. "Zephyrian Fleet, this is Admiral Chen of Earth Defense Command. We reject your demands. Leave our system immediately or face the consequences." The bridge of the stellar dominion fell silent. In 200 years of expansion, no species had ever rejected the Empire's first offer so quickly and decisively. "Sir," Kreltos said quietly, "perhaps they don't understand the situation." Vextar's golden eyes narrowed. "Then we'll help them understand." He opened a channel to the entire fleet. "All ships, target the mining stations in the outer system. Fire 1 plasma burst each. Let's show these aliens what happens to those who defy the Empire." 12 Zephyrian ships turned their weapons toward the human mining operations scattered throughout the system. Plasma cannons charged with deadly energy and fired simultaneously. The mining stations, lightly armored and defenseless, vaporized instantly in balls of superheated gas. "There," Vextar said with satisfaction. "Now they understand that we're serious." But the response from Earth was not what he expected. Instead of panic or surrender, Admiral Chen's voice came back over the communicator, colder than before. "Zephyrian Fleet, you have just murdered 374 civilians. This is an act of war. Prepare to face the consequences." Vextar laughed. "Consequences? From them? What could they possibly do to us?" His question was answered 5 minutes later when Lieutenant Yexadar's voice cracked with alarm. "Admiral, massive energy signature approaching from the inner system." On the main display, a new contact appeared. It was huge, larger than any of the human ships they had detected earlier. As it grew closer, its true size became apparent. "By the void," Kreltos whispered. "That ship is enormous." The human vessel was indeed massive, nearly 2 kilometers long and bristling with weapon systems, unlike anything in the Zephyrian databases. Its hull was dark gray, almost black, and seemed to absorb sensor beams rather than reflect them. "What is that thing?" Vextar demanded. "Unknown, sir. It doesn't match any of the ship designs we observed in our initial scans." The alien ship took position between the Zephyrian fleet and Earth, clearly issuing a challenge. A new voice came. Over the communicator, different from Admiral Chen's but equally determined. "Zephyrian fleet, this is Captain Reeves of the UES Indomitable. You have committed an act of war against the people of Earth. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Vextar studied the ship on his display. It was large, yes, but it was still only 1 vessel against 12. "Signal the fleet. All ships prepare to fire. Let's end this quickly." But as his weapons officer began targeting the human ship, something unexpected happened. The Indomitable's weapon systems came online, and the energy readings made every Zephyrian sensor alarm at once. "Sir," Yexdar said, his voice shaking, "the power output from that ship, it's impossible." "What do you mean?" "Their main guns are showing energy levels equivalent to our entire fleet combined." Before Vextar could respond, the human ship opened fire. But these weren't plasma bolts or energy beams. These were physical projectiles moving at incredible speed. The first salvo of tungsten rods, accelerated to nearly 10% of light speed, struck the Zephyrian cruiser Void Hunter. The rods punched through the ship's void shields, as if they weren't there, tearing massive holes in the hull. Secondary explosions rippled through the vessel as its power systems overloaded. "Impossible," Vexatar shouted. "Kinetic weapons can't penetrate void shields." But the evidence was right there on his display. The Void Hunter was breaking apart, its hull twisted and burning, and the human ship was already firing again. The second salvo targeted the cruiser Star Ripper. This time, the Zephyrians were ready and tried to maneuver away from the incoming projectiles. But the tungsten rods adjusted their course in flight, guided by sophisticated targeting systems. They struck the ship's engine section, and the Star Ripper exploded in a ball of plasma as its power core breached. All ships, return fire, Vextar ordered. Concentrate all plasma cannons on that ship. 11 Zephyrian warships turned their weapons on the Indomitable and fired simultaneously. Hundreds of plasma bolts streaked across space toward the human battleship. But when they struck the ship's hull, something strange happened. The plasma simply disappeared. "What's happening?" Vextar demanded. "Sir, their armor is absorbing our plasma bolts, some kind of energy-dampening field." "That's impossible. Nothing can absorb plasma fire." But the human ship seemed completely unaffected by the concentrated fire of the Zephyrian fleet. Instead, it launched a spread of missiles that glowed with an inner light. "Antimatter signatures!" Yexdar screamed. "Those are antimatter warheads." Missiles struck the destroyer Nightblade and detonated. The antimatter explosion was like a miniature star, releasing more energy than any weapon the Zephyrians had ever seen. When the light faded, the Nightblade was simply gone, vaporized completely. Vextar stared in shock at his display. In less than 5 minutes, he had lost 3 ships to a single human vessel. His perfect record, the Empire's reputation for invincibility, was crumbling before his eyes. "Sir, what are your orders?" Kreltos asked. Before Vextar could answer, the human ship fired again. This time it launched something that the Zephyrian computers couldn't identify. The projectile moved slowly compared to the kinetic rounds, but space itself seemed to bend around it. "Gravity weapon!" someone shouted from the sensor station. "It's a gravity bomb!" The weapon detonated near the cruiser Stellar Pride. Instead of an explosion, space twisted and collapsed in on itself. The massive Zephyrian ship was pulled apart by tidal forces, its hull crumpling like paper as artificial gravity tore it to pieces. 4 ships. In less than 10 minutes, the humans had destroyed 4 of his ships with weapons that shouldn't exist. Weapons that violated everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about warfare. "Admiral," came a frightened voice from the communication station. "The human ship is hailing us." Captain Reeves's voice filled the bridge, calm and professional, despite the destruction she had just caused. "Zephyrian fleet, you now have a choice. Withdraw from this system immediately, or I will continue to demonstrate why humanity survived the resource wars. You have seen what happens when you threaten innocent civilians. Do not test us further." Vexitar looked at his remaining 8 ships, then at the human battleship that had just proven it could destroy his entire fleet single-handedly. For the first time in his career, he was facing an enemy that was stronger than the Zephyrian Empire. The question was, would his pride allow him to admit it? Admiral Vexistar's pride warred with his survival instincts as he stared at the human battleship on his display. The Indomitable hung in space like a dark omen, its weapons still glowing with deadly energy. Around him, his bridge crew waited for orders that could determine the fate of the entire Zephyrian fleet. "Sir," Sub-Commander Kreltos said quietly, "perhaps we should consider withdrawal. We've never faced weapons like these before." "Never!" Vextar snarled. "The Zephyrian Empire does not retreat from primitives. We are the masters of this galaxy." He activated the fleet communication system. "All ships, full attack formation. We'll show these humans what happens when they defy the Empire." Captain Lisa Reeves watched from the bridge of the Indomitable as the 8 remaining Zephyrian ships spread out into a battle formation. She had hoped that destroying 4 of their vessels would convince them to leave. Apparently, these aliens were even more stubborn than humans. "Captain," Chief Engineer Thompson said from his station, "all weapon systems are at full power. We've got plenty of ammunition left." "I can see that, Chief. But I want to try something different this time." Reeves activated the ship's external communication system and broadcast on all frequencies, not just to the Zephyrian fleet, but to every sensor array in the solar system. "This is Captain Reeves of the Indomitable to all listening stations. What you're about to see is a demonstration of human military doctrine. These aliens attacked our civilian population without warning. In response, we will show them why humanity has spent 1,000 years perfecting the art of war." She switched to a direct channel to the Zephyrian flagship. Admiral Vextar, you're about to learn something important about my species. Humans don't just fight to win, we fight to make sure our enemies never threaten us again. On the stellar dominion, Vextar listened to the human captain's words with growing anger. How dare these primitives lecture him about warfare? The Zephyrians had been conquering worlds when humans were still living in caves. All ships, attack! Show them the power of the Empire. The 8 Zephyrian warships charged toward the Indomitable, their plasma cannons firing continuously. The space between the fleets lit up with deadly energy as hundreds of plasma bolts streaked toward the human ship. But Captain Reeves had studied her mother's files during the journey from Earth. She knew exactly what the Indomitable could do. "Activate quantum phase armor," she ordered. The ship's hull shimmered and became translucent. The incoming plasma bolts passed through the ship as if it weren't there, continuing harmlessly into empty space. "Impossible!" Vexatar shouted. "Our sensors show the ship is still there." "It is there," Lieutenant Yextar replied, his voice filled with confusion. "But somehow our weapons can't touch it." Captain Reeves smiled grimly. Her mother had been a genius. The quantum phase armor didn't just absorb energy attacks, it shifted the ship slightly out of normal space, making it impossible to hit with conventional weapons. "Return fire," she ordered. "Railgun batteries, full salvo." The Indomitable's main weapons fired, but this time it wasn't tungsten rods. Massive steel projectiles, each one the size of a small building, accelerated to incredible speeds and slammed into the Zephyrian ships. The destroyers Void Strike and Star Render were crushed instantly, their hulls simply unable to withstand the kinetic impact. "What are those weapons?" Kreltos gasped as he watched 2 more ships die. "Primitive kinetic weapons," Vextar said, but his voice lacked conviction. There was nothing primitive about weapons that could destroy his most advanced warships in a single hit. The human ship continued its attack, but now it was broadcasting information along with its weapons fire. Captain Reeves's voice filled the communication channels, speaking not just to the Zephyrians but to anyone listening. For the education of our alien visitors, the Indomitable was built during humanity's resource wars. These were conflicts where entire continents fought over water and minerals. We learned to build weapons that could crack mountains and vaporize cities because that's what it took to survive. Another salvo from the human ship destroyed the cruiser Dark Nebula. The massive vessel simply came apart under the impact of multiple railgun rounds. Our ancestors fought with sticks and stones, then swords and spears, then gunpowder and nuclear weapons. Each generation of humans had to face enemies who wanted to wipe them out completely. So we learned to build weapons that could do the same. To them, the Indomitable fired its antimatter torpedoes again. This time, the target was the heavy cruiser Stellar Fist. The ship's captain tried desperately to shoot down the incoming missiles, but human point defense systems were designed to stop swarms of nuclear warheads, not individual torpedoes. The antimatter explosion lit up the darkness of space. When it faded, the Stellar Fist was a cloud of expanding plasma. "Your empire conquers through superior technology," Captain Reeves continued her broadcast. "Humans conquer through superior violence. We don't just defeat our enemies, we make examples of them." Only 4 Zephyrian ships remained now, and their formation was falling apart as captains tried desperately to avoid the human ship's weapons. But the Indomitable seemed to anticipate their every move. "Sir," Yextar called out, "their targeting systems are predicting our maneuvers." Vextar realized the truth with growing horror. The human ship wasn't just more powerful than his fleet, it was smarter. Its computers were analyzing Zephyrian tactics in real time and adapting to counter them. "How is that possible?" Captain Reeves answered his question as if she could hear him. "The Indomitable's tactical computer contains the complete military history of humanity. Every battle, every strategy, every weapon system we've ever used against each other. When you fight humans, you're not just fighting one ship or one captain. You're fighting 1,000 years of warfare evolution." The human ship demonstrated this by firing its gravity bombs at the remaining 4 Zephyrian vessels simultaneously. But instead of aiming directly at the ships, the bombs were positioned to create overlapping gravity fields that would trap the enemy vessels. The Zephyrian ships found themselves caught in artificial gravity wells, unable to maneuver as space itself twisted around them. Their engines screamed as they tried to break free, but the gravity bombs held them in place. "Now you understand," Captain Reeves said. "Humans don't fight fair. We don't fight with honor. We fight to win, no matter what it takes." The Indomitable moved closer to the trapped ships, its weapons trained on the Zephyrian flagship. For the first time in his career, Admiral Vextar was completely helpless. "Admiral," Kreltos whispered, "what do we do?" Vexitar looked at his remaining ships, trapped like animals in cages. He looked at the human battleship that had destroyed most of his fleet without taking a single hit. He thought about the Empire's perfect record of conquest and realized it was about to end. But Captain Reeves wasn't finished with her demonstration. She activated a new weapon system that the Zephyrians had never seen before. "This is a Nova cannon," she announced. "It fires a controlled fusion reaction that can melt the core of a planet. We built it because during the resource wars sometimes you had to destroy entire enemy strongholds to make them surrender." The weapon charged with an energy signature that made every Zephyrian sensor scream warnings. The fusion reaction building in the cannon's barrel contained more power than their entire fleet combined. "You wanted to conquer Earth," Captain Reeves said. "Now you know why that was a mistake. Humans don't just defend their homes. We hunt down anyone who threatens them and make sure they never do it again." The Nova cannon finished charging, its barrel glowing like a small star. One shot from that weapon would vaporize everything in a 50-kilometer radius. Admiral Vextar finally understood what he was facing. This wasn't just a more advanced warship. This was a weapon built by a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to kill each other more efficiently. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were teaching the galaxy a lesson about what happened when you threatened them. And that lesson was about to be written in the wreckage of the Zephyrian fleet. Admiral Vextar stared at the Nova cannon pointed directly at his flagship. The weapon's fusion core glowed brighter than a star, containing enough energy to vaporize his ship and everything around it. For the first time in 200 years of conquest, the Zephyrian Empire faced a choice between surrender and complete annihilation. "Sir," Sub-Commander Kreltos whispered, "the gravity wells are crushing our hull. We have maybe 5 minutes before structural failure." Around them, the remaining Zephyrian ships groaned under the artificial gravity created by the human weapons. Metal screamed as it bent beyond its design limits. Warning lights flashed across every console on the bridge. Captain Reeves's voice cut through the chaos, calm and professional, despite the destruction she had caused. "Admiral Vextar, you have 30 seconds to make a choice. Order your fleet to stand down and withdraw from this system, or I will demonstrate what a Nova cannon does to a Zephyrian dreadnought." Vextar closed his golden eyes. In his mind, he could see the Empire's perfect record crumbling. 2 centuries without a single defeat, and now he was about to surrender to a species the Empire had never heard of before today. But the alternative was the complete destruction of his fleet and "Crew, all ships," he said quietly into his communicator. "Cease fire and power down weapons." "Sir?" Kreltos looked at him in shock. "Do it!" Vextar snapped. "Order all ships to stand down immediately." One by one, the remaining Zephyrian vessels powered down their weapons and shields. The space around them fell silent except for the creaking of metal under gravitational stress. Captain Reeves responded immediately. "Gravity bombs deactivating. You are free to maneuver." The artificial gravity wells collapsed, freeing the Zephyrian ships, but none of them moved. They hung in space like beaten animals, waiting for their fate to be decided. "Admiral Vextar," Captain Reeves said, "I'm going to make you an offer." The same offer you made to us, but with different terms. I'm listening. Leave this system immediately. Return to your empire and tell them that Earth is under the protection of humanity. Any future contact will be peaceful, or it will be the last contact your species ever makes. Vextar felt his pride fighting against his survival instincts last time. And if we refuse? The Nova Cannon's energy signature spiked, and space around the Indomitable began to glow with barely contained fusion fire. Then I will follow your fleet back to your home system and demonstrate what happens when humans go to war. Your empire has conquered through superior technology. Humans conquer through superior violence. Would you like to see the difference? The B. Threat was clear. This single human ship had destroyed 2/3 of his fleet without taking any damage. If it followed them home, the Zephyrian capital world would burn. Sir, Lieutenant Yextar called from his station. Incoming transmission from the human homeworld. A new voice joined the conversation. Admiral Chen spoke from Earth with the authority of someone who had just watched humanity's greatest weapon prove its worth. Admiral Vextar, this is Admiral Chen of Earth Defense Command. Captain Reeves has shown remarkable restraint. The Indomitable carries enough firepower to sterilize your entire home system. But we're not conquerors. We're defenders. She paused, letting her words sink in. However, if your empire threatens Earth again, we won't be defending anymore. We'll be hunting, and humans are very good at hunting. Vextar understood the message perfectly. The humans were offering him a choice between retreat and extinction. There was no middle ground. All ships, he said into the fleet communication system, prepare for hyperspace jump. We're returning to Imperial space. Sir, Kreltos asked, quietly, what will you tell the High Command? Vextar looked at the human battleship one last time. The Indomitable hung in space like a dark promise, its weapons still powered and ready. Around it, the wreckage of 4 Zephyrian warships drifted, as evidence of humanity's power. I'll tell them the truth. We found a species that fights harder than we do. The Stellar Dominion and its surviving escorts began charging their hyperspace drives. As they prepared to leave, Captain Reeves opened a final communication channel. Admiral, one more thing. The Indomitable is not the only ship like this. It's just the first one. Humanity has been building weapons for 1,000 years, and we've gotten very good at it. Remember that when you write your report. The Zephyrian fleet jumped to hyperspace, carrying news that would shake the Empire to its core. For the first time in their history, they had encountered a species that was stronger than they were. Captain Reeves watched the enemy ships disappear on her sensors, then opened a channel to Earth. Admiral Chen, this is the Indomitable. Mission accomplished. The aliens have withdrawn from the system. Outstanding work, Captain. Return to Earth for debriefing. But as the Indomitable began its journey home, its sensors detected something interesting. Ships were approaching from multiple directions, drawn by the energy signatures of the battle. Other alien species, curious about the massive weapons discharges they had detected. Captain, Chief Engineer Thompson said, we're being scanned by at least a dozen different ship types. Word is spreading fast. Reeves smiled. Good. Let them look. Let them see what happened here. Over the following days, the story of the battle spread throughout the galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire, undefeated for 2 centuries, had been crushed by a single human warship. Species that had lived in fear of imperial conquest suddenly realized that there was someone stronger than the Zephyrians. The human ship that had appeared from nowhere and destroyed 8 enemy vessels without taking damage became a legend. Stories were told in a dozen languages about the Death World species that built weapons designed for total warfare. On the Zephyrian capital world, Admiral Vextar stood before the High Command and delivered his report. The golden spires of the Imperial Palace gleamed in the afternoon sun. But the news he brought cast shadows over the Empire's future. You're telling us, High Admiral Kexaval said slowly, that a single alien ship destroyed 8 of our warships? Yes, High Admiral. Their weapons are beyond anything in our databases. Kinetic accelerators that can punch through void shields, antimatter explosives that vaporize everything they touch, gravity bombs that twist space itself, and their defensive systems, quantum phase armor that makes them impossible to hit with energy weapons, point defense systems that can stop our plasma bolts. They're not just more advanced than us. They think about warfare differently. The High Command exchanged worried glances. The Zephyrian Empire had ruled through technological superiority for centuries. If there was a species with better technology, their entire civilization was at risk. What do you recommend, Admiral? Vextar thought about the human captain's final warning, about the dark battleship that could destroy planets, about a species that had spent 1,000 years learning to kill each other and had turned that knowledge into the deadliest weapons in the galaxy. We leave them alone, High Admiral. We establish peaceful contact and hope they don't decide we're a threat. The mighty Zephyrian Empire, afraid of primitives? High Admiral, with respect, they're not primitives. They're a species that has survived wars we can't imagine. They've built weapons we can't understand. And they've made it very clear what happens to anyone who threatens their world. The High Command voted unanimously to establish peaceful relations with Earth. The Zephyrian Empire's age of conquest was over, ended by a species that proved there was always someone stronger, someone more dangerous, someone better at warfare. Meanwhile, on Earth, the Indomitable returned to its hiding place in the asteroid belt. Captain Reeves submitted her report and returned to regular duty, but she kept the genetic codes that could activate humanity's ultimate weapon, because everyone knew this wouldn't be the last time humanity faced hostile aliens. And when that day came, the galaxy would once again learn why humans had survived the resource wars, why they had conquered their own world through superior violence, and why threatening Earth was the last mistake any species would ever make. The legend of the Indomitable spread across the stars, carrying a simple message. Humanity was peaceful until threatened. But when they went to war, they didn't fight to win. They fought to make sure no one ever threatened them again.